I've got a couple of examples of the big three on peaks in this video, uh, showing you some leading indicator information. And on the charts, we are in the symbol SFUN. And this vertical yellow line is June 19th, 2017, as you can see over here on the right in the data window. In the trend red chart, we have trend red highest going up, power red is highest and going up, and swing Cyan is highest and going up. And in fact, we also have zip red that is at 100, and it's in a low angle up. But and also I'll mention it as long as I'm at it. Price green and red are red's highest at 121, greens at 117. And in this particular example, this is what I'll say normally happens. You normally have a peak on all three of them, and they go down the next day. But when you see, like, this is one of these cases where you have two nice green candles. On this particular day, we can go to the zip red, and in fact there's several red lines. The gray and the pink as well are in low angle ups, or low angle up patterns, telling us that the next day it's going to go down. Swing pink is in a low angle up as well. So the leading indicators, the fast moving lines, zip red and swing pink, are probably the two really fast moving lines. Zip red is really fast, and it has really long line lengths. Zip red will move 40, 50, 70, 80, over 90 points in one day. Swing pink will not do that. Obviously the numbers are not there because the number count ratios are, I mean, if it's up at 4 or 5, it's really high. But and it changes fast, I guess, is one of the key things about swing pink. And so but it doesn't move as far as zip red does. But those are probably the two quickest lines in the system. And the thing that I want to point out here is when you spot the big three on a peak, if you do some investigation and just look in your zip chart and look in your for possibly some other lines, for maybe some up touches or whatever the case may be. This is a classic where you've heard me, I think you've heard me say it before if you've watched any videos at all. The power red is in a nose up pattern, or I'll say what the premise is the power red has crossed over the zero line, and its nose is sticking out up above the other lines and the zero line as well. You can have the nose stick out under, or you can have the nose stick out over. It's just like this green line right here in the zip chart. That green, the green nose is sticking down, and it's likely to go up the next day, and which it does, because we can see it go up. But these three lines, the trend red, the power red, and the power Cyan, when they're up strong like that, every one of them has crossed over the zero line as well. Then it's just like when we're talking about the proximity group patterns, when trend red down touches under zero, the crossover line day that it goes down under zero is also the signal day. That crossover signal is the crossover that goes back up the next day. So that happens a lot in many of the charts. So be aware of that when it does. But again, you can see leading indicators telling you what's going to happen. The power 4 can actually be leading indicators in certain situations. And there's many of them that are leading indicators simply because they're so fast. So this is an example. I've got one other one that I want to show you a month or so back here. And this particular one has trend red on the peak. Power red has actually gone up on the peak and now is on its way down, even though we have a fairly good sized green candle. And then of course swing Cyan is in a low angle up, and trend red is going down, but zip red is going down, but zip green is highest, but it's at 87, not at 100. And so you actually have there, you have a red-green twin peak there on that green vertical line day. Red comes up and then green comes up the following day. You have 1 day and 2 day red-green peak patterns, and 1 day and 2 day red-green twin spikes. So, and they just are reversal patterns that tell us that the next day it's going to start down. But in this case here, what I wanted to point out to you is that power red became a leading indicator and showed you that the price was going to go down the next day. Now actually it gapped up a few pennies and then it went up a little bit and then went down. So the next day when you bought it, you could buy it accordingly. It's like so many times, it follows the candle activity theory, depending if you're anticipating a red candle or a green candle. And so also price green is at 122, price red is at 120. They're high enough to go down, and obviously they're both in a low angle up pattern, which tells us that the next day it's going to go down. So that's a couple of examples on the big three on peaks. And when you can have in this case, the power red was going down. Sometimes the power Cyan or the swing Cyan will be going down, and the other two will be up. It's just a case of them, the different lines reflecting different types of power, and those market forces within that strength. Like, for example, in this one, when power red went down, it didn't have the strength to stay up there, so it was showing us that it was the price of the value of the stock was going to go down the next day. So it's a case of reading a number of indicators together. It's an exciting system. I don't care if you're talking about gaps before the gap occurs, or if you're talking about market strength where the indicator lines tell you about the power of a movement on the first day of the movement. And that's a classic BOC higher pattern. When the right leg of the BOC pattern is longer or higher than the left leg, then you've got greater strength, or you've got more pressure that it has been pushing, or that is pushing that stock up. And what happens many times is that and keep in mind, the BOC pattern is the start of the uptrend. Sometimes, like for example, in the trend red and green, sometimes trend red will go up, will be in a BOC pattern, but it won't go above trend green. Sometimes it's the second day, sometimes it's the third day before the red crosses over the green. And then again, on other videos, if you haven't heard me say it before, when trend red crosses over green, that's the official Whoops, excuse me. That's the official start of the uptrend. And then as trend red is traveling up and above trend green, you're in an uptrend. And the same way going down. Red will be under and traveling under, will be down and under green when it's in a downtrend. So, but the BOC patterns of the trend red typically identify the turnaround, because you got to have, you want to look at the fast lines, and the big three are really very powerful lines, and the combination of the powers that those three lines identify, when they're in a combination together, they seem to react in a longer length of time. In other words, you get a downtrend or an uptrend of several days. Sometimes, if the conditions are right, you'll get a gap. But the big three, you got low angle tops that'll tell you it's going down. You'll have low angle bottoms. You'll have a low angle down at a bottom, on a bottom, that'll tell you it's going up. I mean, keep in mind, you can have low angle up and low angle down on peaks or on bottoms. But it's just exciting. We are amazed at how this system works and what you can recognize in the activity that you have the next day. It is simply amazing, and again, the indicators are the 22 market force recognition indicators are the heart of the system. Without them, we wouldn't have the patterns, we wouldn't have the conditions, we wouldn't have the signals. And by putting it all together, we have the three-step formula. And then, of course, the three powers of the system are the indicator power, the formula power, and the procedures power. And when you have, let's say you have 3 or 4 patterns that you want to examine and compare, that simple analysis that's done each and every time you make a decision about buying or selling a stock, that analysis is the procedures power. And doing that time after time after time, you begin to recognize the relationship between the indicator lines and the price movement when those indicator lines are in different positions, locations, or directions. And so you can put the pieces together real easily. And you can watch these videos before you start investing with real funds. I mean, the website is open 24 hours a day. So it's, you know, yeah, we've got a fantastic system. Again, on other videos, I've asked the question, what's more important, the trade that you make or the system that you use to find the trade that you make? When you have an excellent system, you can end up with excellent results. And there's just a lot of power that has, in some cases, and we'll be the first to admit it, that we've kind of accidentally stumbled into some of this power. So be aware of what you're using right now as your system, because in 2007, when I made my very first electronic trade on my computer, I thought the stock was going to go up. I did not have one indicator built. But yet I was willing to risk money and take a chance, if you will. It was my thoughts were more like gambling than like trading. And if you're in that mode, you need to get out of it. You need to treat it as technical analysis is supposed to be treated, because you can identify what's happening, but you have to use the system. And by putting, sometimes I'll say, by putting on the eyeglasses of the day trading visual basics system, the clarity of what is going on with the pressures and the forces within that specific stock at that particular point in time become real evident. And that's the power of the system. And it builds confidence in us individually, or as individuals, I mean. Our knowledge increases, and when we have more confidence, we trade much more effectively. So the whole thing builds upon itself. I really encourage you to look at more videos, recognize what this system is doing, because it is absolutely amazing.